welcome to Mind Over Mood, Rewiring Your Emotional Compass. I'm Alex, and I'm so excited to embark on this journey with all of you.
And I'm Lisa. Real quick before we jump in, just a heads up that while we're discussing psychological techniques, this podcast is for educational purposes and isn't medical advice. If you're struggling, please consult with a qualified professional.
That's an important note. We're here to guide you through practical ways to understand and manage your emotions. Have you ever felt like your feelings are running the show and you're just along for the ride?
That describes a feeling many of us know all too well. But what if I told you that you have more power over your emotional well-being than you might think? This podcast is all about discovering that power. We'll be exploring techniques grounded in cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, which is a really effective way to understand how our thoughts influence our feelings and our actions.
So, it's not about pretending to be happy when you're not, right? It's about understanding why we feel the way we do and what we can do about it.
Exactly, Alex. The core idea behind Mind Over Mood is that our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors are all interconnected. Think of it as a three-legged stool. If one leg is wobbly, the whole thing can become unstable. By learning to adjust our thinking, we can positively impact how we feel and what we do.
That makes sense. It's like a ripple effect. A thought can trigger a feeling, which then might lead to a certain behavior. And sometimes it works the other way around too. Our behavior can influence our thoughts and feelings.
Precisely. This series is designed to give you the tools to become an expert in this interconnection. We're not just going to talk about the theories, we're going to dive deep into practical strategies. Over the coming episodes, we'll see how to identify automatic negative thoughts, those quick, often unexamined thoughts that pop into our heads.
Automatic negative thoughts. I can already think of a few of those that seem to visit me quite often.
They're very common, and once we learn to spot them, we can begin to challenge them. We'll learn how to become our own detectives, looking for evidence to support or question these thoughts. Is this thought really true? Is it helpful? Are there other ways I could look at this situation?
So, it's about becoming more aware of our inner dialogue, that constant stream of thoughts running through our minds. It's like turning down the volume on the unhelpful chatter and turning up the volume on more constructive thinking.
You've got it. This process of becoming an observer of your own mind is a crucial first step. We'll call it thought catching. Imagine your thoughts are like leaves floating down a stream. You can sit on the bank and watch them go by without having to grab onto every single one.
That's a great image. I like the idea of observing without necessarily getting caught up in every thought. So, after we start catching these thoughts, what's the next step?
The next step is often challenging them. We'll learn to look for logical fallacies in our thinking, also known as cognitive distortions. These are common patterns of thinking that are often inaccurate and lead to negative emotions. For example, mind reading, assuming you know what someone else is thinking, usually negatively. Or catastrophizing, expecting the worst-case scenario to happen.
Oh, I'm guilty of mind reading and catastrophizing. It's reassuring to know there are names for these patterns and that we can work on them. So, we catch the thought, then we challenge its accuracy or helpfulness. What happens then?
Once we start challenging those negative thoughts and recognizing cognitive distortions, we can begin to reframe our perspective. This doesn't mean forcing positive thoughts, but rather finding more balanced, realistic, and helpful ways of looking at situations. It's about exploring alternative interpretations that might lead to more positive feelings and healthier actions.
So, it's about shifting your mindset from one that's perhaps overly critical or pessimistic to one that's more balanced and solution-oriented.
Exactly. And this leads us to understanding the full cycle, the thought-feeling-behavior cycle. We'll explore how these three elements constantly influence each other over time. By making changes in one area, you can create positive momentum in the others.
That's powerful. It really emphasizes that we're not just passive recipients of our emotions. We can actively participate in shaping them.
Absolutely. And we'll also delve into behavioral activation. This is about understanding that sometimes it's not our thoughts that cause us to feel bad, but rather our lack of engaging in activities that make us feel good or give us a sense of accomplishment. Taking action, even small steps, can be a powerful mood booster.
So, even if you're not feeling motivated, taking that first step can actually create motivation and improve your mood. That combats that feeling of being stuck.
Precisely. We'll also be integrating mindfulness and emotional awareness. This means learning to be present with your feelings, whatever they are, without judgment. It's about acknowledging your emotions as they arise, understanding them better, and developing skills to cope with difficult feelings in a healthy way.
Mindfulness can feel a bit abstract sometimes. How will we make that practical for listeners in terms of managing their mood?
We'll focus on simple, accessible mindfulness practices that you can weave into your daily life. Ways that help you observe your thoughts and feelings without getting overwhelmed. It's about developing a calmer, more centered approach to your inner experience.
And problem solving? That sounds like a crucial skill for emotional resilience. Life throws curveballs, and we need to know how to handle them.
Definitely. We'll break down problem solving into manageable steps, equipping you with a structured approach to tackle challenges that might be impacting your mood. This will involve identifying the problem, brainstorming solutions, evaluating them, and then implementing the best course of action.
So, we're building a comprehensive toolkit throughout this series.
That's the goal. And as we build this toolkit, we'll also focus on building healthy habits. Sustainable mood optimization isn't just about a one-time fix. It's about creating consistent routines that support your emotional well-being in the long term.
And because life isn't always smooth sailing, you mentioned managing setbacks. That sounds important for keeping the progress going.
It's essential. We'll discuss how to view setbacks not as failures, but as opportunities for learning and growth. Understanding that progress isn't always linear is key to maintaining motivation and resilience. We'll share strategies for getting back on track when you feel you've slipped.
And towards the end, we'll be exploring cultivating gratitude and positive psychology. It sounds like a wonderful way to round out the practical aspects we'll cover.
It truly is. Focusing on gratitude and amplifying positive experiences can significantly shift your overall outlook and emotional well-being. So, by the end of the series, you'll have a comprehensive emotional toolkit. You'll understand your emotional landscape, how your thoughts shape your feelings, and you'll have practical strategies for managing those challenging moments and building a more resilient, positive emotional life.
It sounds like an incredibly empowering journey. We're essentially learning how to rewire our emotional compass, as the title suggests.
That's the perfect way to put it, Lisa. We're not just going to talk about it, we're going to equip you with the knowledge and the skills to do it. So, are you ready to start rewiring your emotional compass with us?
I am Alex, and I'm sure our listeners are too. Next episode, The Foundation, Understanding Your Emotional Landscape. Welcome back to Mind Over Mood, Rewiring Your Emotional Compass.
And I'm Lisa. It's great to have you with us again.
Last time, we kicked off our journey by introducing the core idea of our podcast, that we can actively reshape our emotional responses, much like rewiring a compass to point us towards a more positive emotional landscape. We talked about how our thoughts, feelings, and actions are all connected.
That's right, Alex. We learned that it's not about suppressing emotions, but rather understanding them and developing a healthier relationship with them.
Exactly. And today, we're diving deeper into the foundation, understanding your emotional landscape. This is all about getting a clear picture of the basic building blocks of our emotional world.
So, we're going to explore what emotions really are and how they fit in with our thoughts and behaviors. It sounds like this is where the real work begins.
It is in the best possible way. Think of it like this. Before you can build a sturdy house, you need a solid foundation. And for our emotional well-being, that foundation is understanding the distinct, yet interconnected elements of our inner experience. We're talking about emotions, thoughts, and behaviors.
Okay, so let's break those down. What's the first key piece of this foundation?
It's understanding emotions themselves. Often we think of emotions as these big, overwhelming things that just happen to us like a sudden storm rolling in. But while they can feel powerful, emotions are actually signals. They are your body and mind's way of responding to the world around you and your internal world.
Signals? Like a warning light on a car dashboard?
That's a fantastic analogy, Lisa. Yes, a signal. A signal that something is happening and that it might be important for you to pay attention to. For example, fear is a signal that you might be in danger. Joy is a signal that something good is happening. Anger can signal that a boundary has been crossed.
So, they're not necessarily good or bad. They just are? They tell us something.
Precisely. And it's crucial to remember that emotions are temporary. Even the most intense feelings eventually pass. The challenge for many of us is that we get so caught up in the feeling itself that we lose sight of it being a temporary state.
That makes sense. When I'm really upset, it feels like it will last forever. But looking back, it usually fades.
Right? Now, the next crucial piece of our foundation is understanding thoughts. Thoughts are the interpretations, opinions, and judgments we have about events. They are what we say to ourselves in our heads.
This sounds like the mind part of mind over mood.
Exactly. And this is where a lot of our emotional power lies. Our thoughts are not facts. They're simply interpretations. Think about an event. A friend doesn't reply to your text message.
Okay,
Now, your thought about that event could be, they must be angry with me, or they're ignoring me, or perhaps they're probably just busy and will get back to me later. See how all three are different interpretations of the same event?
Wow, yes.
and I can immediately see how those different thoughts would lead to different feelings. If I thought my friend was ignoring me, I'd feel hurt or anxious. If I thought they were just busy, I'd probably feel okay.
You've hit on a core concept, Lisa. This brings us to behaviors. Behaviors are the actions we take or don't take in response to our emotions and thoughts. They're the outward expressions of our internal world.
So, going back to the text message example, if I felt anxious because I thought my friend was ignoring me, my behavior might be to send them another text, or to call them repeatedly, or maybe to withdraw and feel sad. If I felt okay because I thought they were busy, my behavior might be to just go about my day.
Perfectly put. So, we have emotions, the signals, the feelings. We have thoughts, our interpretations. And we have behaviors, our actions. These three are inextricably linked. They form a cycle.
A cycle. That's a good way to think about it. So, an event happens, it triggers a thought. That thought leads to an emotion, and that emotion influences our behavior.
Yes, and it doesn't just stop there. Our behavior can also influence our thoughts and emotions, and so on. It's a continuous loop. For example, if your behavior is to isolate yourself because you feel sad, that isolation can lead to more negative thoughts and intensify your sadness.
It's like a self-perpetuating system.
It can be. And that's why understanding this foundation is so vital. We often blame our emotions for our actions, or we feel our actions are just a natural consequence of a situation. But what we're learning is that our thoughts about the situation are often the critical bridge between an event and our emotional and behavioral response.
So, we're not just passengers experiencing these things. We are active participants, even if we don't realize it.
Exactly. And the really empowering part is that while we can't always control external events, and sometimes even our immediate emotions can feel overwhelming, we can learn to observe and to influence our thoughts. By changing our thoughts, we can change our feelings and our behaviors.
This is where the rewiring comes in, isn't it? By understanding this emotional landscape, we can start to identify where we want to make changes.
Precisely. We're not saying emotions aren't real or important. They are, but they are often triggered by our interpretations of events, our thoughts, rather than by the events themselves in a direct, unadulterated way. This is a fundamental principle of cognitive behavioral therapy.
Recognizing this interconnectedness is empowering.
We absolutely will explore this more deeply. For today, remember this key takeaway. Your emotional landscape is composed of emotions, thoughts, and behaviors. These three elements are constantly interacting. And crucially, your thoughts are often the primary driver of how you feel and how you act.
So, to recap our foundation, emotions are signals, thoughts are your interpretations, and behaviors are your actions. And they all influence each other in a continuous cycle.
You've got it. Recognizing this interconnectedness is the first step to gaining more control over your emotional well-being. It shifts the focus from feeling helpless to feeling empowered.
It's like realizing you have a map of your own mind, and you can actually learn to read it and navigate it.
That's a perfect way to put it, Lisa. This understanding is the bedrock upon which we'll build all our further techniques for managing mood and rewiring our emotional compass.
Fantastic. So, we've set the stage by understanding the core components of our emotional world.
Indeed, we have. Next episode, decoding the thought-feeling connection, the CBT triangle. Welcome back to Mind Over Mood, rewiring your emotional compass. Last time we laid the groundwork by understanding your emotional landscape. Today, we're exploring a crucial element that shapes how we feel, the power of automatic thoughts.
That's right, Alex. Last time, we talked about identifying different emotions and understanding what triggers them. Now, we're going to focus on the very first ripple in the pond, the thoughts that start it all.
Exactly. Think about your mind as a bustling city. There are all sorts of things happening, people walking, cars driving, businesses operating. Your emotions are like the general atmosphere of the city, sometimes sunny and bright, sometimes stormy and tense. But what causes that atmosphere to shift? Often, it's the constant, rapid-fire internal conversations we have with ourselves. These are what we call automatic thoughts.
Automatic thoughts. So, these are the thoughts that just pop into our heads without us really trying?
Precisely. They're those quick, fleeting thoughts, images, or judgments that go through your mind. They often happen so fast and with such familiarity that we don't even notice them. They're like mental knee-jerk reactions. For example, you might see a friend walk past you without saying hello, and instantly, a thought might pop into your head. They're angry with me. Or maybe you make a small mistake at work, and your mind immediately thinks, I'm so incompetent.
Ah, I can definitely relate to those. The incompetent one often makes an appearance for me, and I don't usually stop to question it. It just feels true in that moment.
And that's the tricky part, isn't it? Because these automatic thoughts feel so real, so immediate, they have a direct and powerful impact on how we feel. If your automatic thought is they're angry with me, how do you think that's going to make you feel?
Well, probably anxious or sad, or maybe even defensive.
Exactly. And if your automatic thought is, I'm so incompetent, you're likely to feel discouraged, ashamed, or frustrated. So you see that direct link? The automatic thought acts like a signal, and your emotion is the response to that signal. It's a very rapid chain reaction.
It's like a tiny seed of a thought that quickly grows into a big emotional tree. And because the thought is so automatic, we just accept the emotion that grows from it. We don't stop to examine the seed itself.
That's a perfect analogy, Lisa. We often don't question the thought. We just experience the feeling. And this is a really key concept. Many of our mood problems aren't necessarily caused by the events themselves, but by the automatic thoughts we have about those events. It's the story we tell ourselves that dictates how we feel.
So, to manage our mood, we first need to become aware of these automatic thoughts. But how do we do that if they're so fast and unexamined?
That's where the skill of thought catching comes in, which we'll delve into more deeply later. For now, the first step is simply to recognize their existence and their power. Try to become an observer of your own mind. When you notice a strong emotion arise, say you feel upset, anxious, or angry, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, what was going through my mind just before I started feeling this way?
So it's like rewinding a mental video to see what thought triggered the feeling.
Exactly like rewinding. And sometimes the thoughts will be very clear. Other times, it might be an image or sensation. Or it might be a more general feeling, like a sense of dread. The important thing is to start looking for them. Think of them as the aha moments in your emotional journey. Aha, that thought led to this feeling.
This reminds me of when I'm trying to remember where I put my keys. I have to retrace my steps mentally. This sounds like retracing our mental steps to find the thought.
It's a very similar process. And just to reinforce this, let's think back to our conversation on understanding your emotional landscape. Remember how we discussed that different emotions have different impacts and require different responses? Well, the automatic thoughts are the fuel for those emotions. If you're consistently having automatic thoughts that are critical, pessimistic, or catastrophic, you're going to be fueling negative emotions on a regular basis.
And that can lead to a downward spiral, where a small negative thought snowballs into prolonged sadness or anxiety.
Precisely. These automatic thoughts are incredibly influential because they operate largely beneath our conscious awareness. They're the silent scripts that play out behind the scenes, shaping our perception of reality and driving our emotional responses. They could be a mix of words, images, and even gut feelings. For instance, after a long day, you might see your partner looking tired, and an automatic thought could be an image of them looking disappointed in you, leading to a feeling of guilt.
It's like we have a personal narrator in our heads, and we often just accept what the narrator is saying without checking the facts.
That's an excellent way to put it. This narrator can be very convincing, even when what they're saying isn't entirely accurate or helpful. We're going to spend a lot of time learning how to have a constructive dialogue with that narrator and eventually how to change their script for the better. But before we can change the script, we have to be able to hear it.
So, for this week, the homework is to simply listen for our inner monologue, to pay attention to those quick thoughts that pop up, especially when we're feeling a strong emotion.
That's exactly it. Be a curious observer of your own mind. Don't judge the thoughts, just notice them. They are a natural part of how our brains work, but by becoming aware of them, we gain the power to influence them and, in turn, our emotional well-being. We're starting to build that awareness that will allow us to tackle more advanced techniques later on.
It's fascinating how much impact these fleeting thoughts can have. This learning will help us understand the connection between our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors.
Indeed, we've introduced the concept of automatic thoughts today. We've seen how these rapid, often unexamined, internal messages have a direct and significant impact on our emotional state. Remember, they're the silent scripts that shape our feelings, so the first crucial step is to beginning noticing them.
To recap, automatic thoughts are those quick, fleeting internal messages, words, or images that pop into our minds without conscious effort. They feel real and have a powerful, immediate effect on our emotions. By becoming aware of these thoughts, especially when we experience a strong emotion, we begin to understand the root cause of our feelings. This awareness is the essential first step towards rewiring our emotional responses.
Next, we'll explore decoding the thought-feeling connection, which is often called the CBT triangle. Welcome back. Last time, we explored your inner monologue. Today, we're discussing how those thoughts connect to what you feel, focusing on the CBT triangle.
The CBT triangle. That sounds like a foundational concept, Alex. If automatic thoughts are the starting point, what exactly is this triangle?
Excellent question, Lisa. Think of it as a fundamental interconnectedness. The CBT triangle, which stands for cognitive behavioral therapy, illustrates that our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors are all deeply entwined. They constantly influence each other. In simple terms, what you think affects how you feel, and how you feel can affect what you do. And importantly, what you do can also affect how you think and feel. It's a dynamic loop.
So, it's not just one influencing the others in a straight line, but a continuous cycle?
Precisely. For our purposes today, we're going to focus on the powerful connection between thoughts and feelings. This is arguably the most direct and impactful link when we're talking about changing our mood. The core idea is that it's often not the actual situation that causes our distress, but rather our interpretation of that situation, which is driven by our thoughts.
I think I'm starting to get it. So, if I have a negative thought about something, I'm likely to feel a negative emotion because of that thought?
Exactly. Let's use a common example. Imagine you're at a social gathering, and you see someone you know walk past without acknowledging you. Now, your mind could, and often does, jump to conclusions.
Oh, I can see where this is going. My first thought might be, they're ignoring me. They don't like me anymore.
Perfect. You've hit on a typical automatic thought. Now, how do you feel when you have that thought? They're ignoring me. They don't like me anymore.
Well, I'd probably feel hurt, maybe a bit anxious, rejected. My chest might feel tight, and I might want to withdraw from the room. That's the feeling part of the triangle, right?
Absolutely. You feel hurt and anxious, negative emotions. And notice how your behavior might then be influenced. You might start avoiding that person, or perhaps you might even leave the party early. This is the triangle in action. A thought led to feelings, which led to a behavior.
It's quite powerful when you break it down like that. So, what are some other interpretations of that same situation? Could there be other thoughts that don't lead to those negative feelings?
That's the beauty of understanding this connection. Let's go back to the same scenario. You see someone you know walk past without acknowledging you. What if instead of thinking they're ignoring you because they dislike you, you considered other possibilities?
Hmm.
Maybe they didn't see me? Or perhaps they were lost and thought about something else.
Precisely. See how quickly those alternative thoughts change the emotional landscape? If your thought is, they probably didn't see me, they're likely preoccupied with something else. How do you feel?
Oh, that's so different. I'd probably feel nothing much. Maybe a little less concerned. Certainly not hurt or anxious. I'd just think, okay, they didn't see me.
Exactly. The situation is identical. The person walked past. But a shift in your thought completely changed your feeling. This illustrates that it's not usually the external event itself, but our internal interpretation, our thoughts, that creates our emotional response. This is a cornerstone of cognitive behavioral therapy.
So, the key takeaway here is that by understanding and potentially changing our thoughts, we can directly influence our feelings. It's like having a dial for our emotions that we can adjust by changing the channel in our minds.
That's a fantastic analogy, Lisa. You can adjust your emotional dial by consciously examining and, when necessary, reframing your thoughts. Imagine your thoughts as the input and your feelings as the output. Change the input, and you can change the output.
It sounds powerful, but also like it requires practice. Our minds are so used to jumping to those automatic, sometimes negative, conclusions.
It absolutely requires practice, and that's what we'll be building towards. But the first step is recognizing this connection. It's about developing an awareness that your thoughts are not necessarily facts, and that you have the power to question them and consider alternatives. This understanding is the foundation for all the techniques we'll explore.
So, we've established that thoughts and feelings are tightly linked. A negative thought can lead to negative feelings, and an alternative, more balanced thought can lead to more neutral or positive feelings, even in the same situation.
That's a perfect summary of the core of the CBT triangle as it relates to our mood. We're not saying that external events don't matter, but we're saying that our internal interpretation of those events plays a massive role in how we experience them emotionally. By becoming more aware of our thoughts, we gain the power to manage our feelings more effectively.
It's like realizing you have a remote control for your emotional state, and the buttons are your thoughts.
Exactly. And soon, we're going to delve into the specific types of unhelpful thinking patterns that often lead us down that path of negative emotions. We'll be discussing what are called cognitive distortions, your brain's common shortcuts that can often lead you astray.
So we're going to learn how to spot those unhelpful thought patterns. That sounds like the practical next step in really using this CBT triangle.
You've got it. So, to recap what we've covered today, we explored the CBT triangle, focusing on the powerful link between our thoughts and our feelings. We learned that it's often our interpretation of events through our thoughts that shapes our emotional experience. By understanding and adjusting our thoughts, we can directly influence how we feel. This understanding is the key to rewiring our emotional compass.
That makes a lot of sense. It's empowering to know that our feelings aren't just random occurrences, but are often a direct result of our own thinking.
Indeed. And with that understanding, we're ready to move on to identifying the specific ways our thinking can get us into trouble.
Looking forward to it.
Next episode, identifying cognitive distortions, your brain's shortcuts. Welcome back to Mind Over Mood. Last time, we explored the powerful connection between your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, often called the CBT triangle. Today, we're diving into something that fuels that triangle, cognitive distortions.
Cognitive distortions. That sounds a bit technical, Alex. Can you break it down for us?
Absolutely, Lisa. Think of cognitive distortions as sneaky mental shortcuts, or, you guessed it, distortions in our thinking. They're like optical illusions for our minds. Our brains, in an effort to be efficient, sometimes jump to conclusions or misinterpret information, and these distortions can lead us down a path of negative emotions.
So, it's not that we're deliberately thinking negatively, but our brain is taking a little detour that lands us in a bad mood?
Exactly. They're often automatic. You don't consciously choose to distort your thinking. It just happens. And the crucial thing to remember is that these aren't signs of personal weakness. They're learned patterns of thinking that we can learn to identify and change.
Okay, that's reassuring. So, what are some of these common mental detours our brains take?
Let's start with a really common one, all or nothing thinking, also known as black and white thinking. This is when you see things in extremes. Something is either perfect or a complete failure. There's no middle ground.
Ah, I can definitely relate to that. For example, if I don't get a perfect score on a task, I might think, I completely messed that up.
Precisely. You're not acknowledging the parts you did well. You're seeing it as all bad because it wasn't all perfect. It's like saying if you're not a marathon winner, you're a complete failure as a runner.
That's a good way to put it. It ignores all the effort and improvement.
Another frequent distortion is overgeneralization. This is when you take one negative event and believe it's going to be a never-ending pattern of defeat. You see one instance of something negative and conclude it will always happen.
So, if I have a difficult conversation with someone, I might think, I'm terrible at relationships and I'll never be able to get along with anyone.
You've nailed it. One setback becomes a universal, unending problem. It's like if you trip once, you conclude you'll be tripping everywhere you go for the rest of your life. It's a big leap from one event to an endless future.
That does sound like a pretty dramatic jump.
It is, and it's something many of us do. Then we have mental filtering. This is where you pick out a single negative detail and dwell on it exclusively. The rest of your experience, even if it was positive, becomes invisible.
So, you're only looking at the dark cloud, not the sunshine behind it?
Exactly. Imagine you give a presentation and get a lot of positive feedback, but one person makes a minor critical comment. With mental filtering, you'll focus only on that one critique, and you'll miss all the praise and positive engagement. The entire presentation is tarnished by that one comment.
That's why sometimes even good experiences can feel bad. You're filtering out the good stuff.
Precisely. And this often goes hand in hand with discounting the positive. This is closely related to mental filtering, but it's more about actively rejecting any positive experiences or qualities. You might tell yourself that positive things you or others don't really count.
So, if someone compliments you, you might dismiss it by thinking, oh, they're just being nice. They don't really mean it.
Yes. Or if you achieve something, you might think that was just luck, or anyone could have done that. You're actively undermining your own successes and positive attributes. It's like having a little internal critic that says, that doesn't count.
That's a tough habit to break. It's like your brain is protecting itself from feeling good in a weird way.
It can feel that way. It's often a protective mechanism, but it's not serving us well. Now, let's talk about jumping to conclusions. This distortion has two main flavors. The first is mind reading. This is when you assume you know what another person is thinking, usually negatively, without any real evidence.
Like thinking, they're upset with me, when there's no reason to believe that.
Right? You're convinced you know their inner thoughts, and usually, those thoughts are not favorable towards you. The second flavor is the fortune-telling error. This is when you predict a negative outcome, believing it's a fact, and then you act as if it were already true.
This sounds like the opposite of positive affirmations, but in a negative way.
It is. For example, before a social event, you might think, I'm going to be awkward and boring, and no one will talk to me. Then, because you're expecting it, you might behave in a way that makes it more likely to happen. You're creating your own negative prophecy.
So your belief can actually influence the outcome. That's powerful.
It is indeed. Another distortion is magnification and minimization. This is when you magnify your own mistakes or flaws and minimize your strengths or positive qualities. You're like a carnival mirror, making mountains out of molehills and molehills out of mountains.
So, a small mistake becomes a huge disaster, and a real accomplishment becomes insignificant.
Exactly. You're blowing things out of proportion in one direction and shrinking them in the other. Then we have emotional reasoning. This distortion assumes that your negative emotions necessarily reflect the way things really are. If you feel bad, things must be bad.
So, if I feel like I'm a failure, then I am a failure?
That's the leap. You're taking your feelings as direct evidence of reality. I feel anxious, therefore there must be something to be anxious about. This ignores the fact that our emotions can be triggered by distorted thoughts, not necessarily by reality.
That's a really important distinction. Our feelings are valid, but they aren't always accurate reflections of objective truth.
You got it. And finally, let's cover should statements. This is when you have rigid rules about how you or others should behave. When these rules are violated, you experience guilt, frustration, or anger.
I should always be on time, or he should never interrupt me.
Precisely. These are rules that you've set for yourself or others. When things don't match these rigid expectations, it leads to distress. It's like having a strict rule book that can easily lead to disappointment when life doesn't follow our pre-written script.
Wow, Alex.
We've covered quite a few. All or nothing thinking, overgeneralization, mental filtering, discounting the positive, jumping to conclusions with mind reading and fortune telling, magnification and minimization, emotional reasoning, and should statements. These are indeed like shortcuts our brain takes.
They are. And by learning to identify them, we take the first crucial step in rewiring our emotional compass. Remember, recognizing these patterns isn't about judging yourself, but about understanding how your mind works so you can guide it more effectively.
So, the key takeaway is that these distortions are common, not a sign of personal failing, and once we can spot them, we can start to challenge them.
Exactly. In our next talk, we'll begin exploring exactly how to become a better observer of your own mind and start to catch these thoughts in the act.
Looking forward to it.
Next episode, the art of thought catching, becoming an observer of your mind. Welcome back. Last time, we explored those sneaky mental shortcuts, cognitive distortions that pull our emotional ropes.
Right, Alex. And understanding those distortions is so important because they're often fueled by our automatic thoughts, those rapid, fleeting thoughts that pop into our heads without us even trying. They're like the background noise of our minds.
Exactly, Lisa. Today, we're focusing on a crucial skill, the art of thought catching. This is where we learn to become active observers of our own minds. It's about noticing those automatic thoughts as they happen.
Think of it like this. Before, we were just going along with the flow of our thoughts, often feeling their emotional impact without realizing where they came from. Now we're learning to step back and actually see what those thoughts are.
Precisely. The first step in changing how we feel is understanding what we're thinking. And that starts with awareness. So, how do we actually catch a thought? It sounds a bit whimsical, doesn't it?
It does. But the practice itself is quite systematic. It's about tuning into that inner dialogue. When you notice yourself feeling a strong emotion, perhaps sadness, anger, or anxiety, that's your cue.
That strong emotion is like a siren, telling you, hey, something significant is happening in your mind right now. So pause, take a breath, and try to identify the thought that just flashed through your mind.
And these thoughts are often very short and simple. They might be a single word or a short phrase. For instance, if you're feeling anxious before a meeting, a thought might be, I'll mess up. Or if you're feeling down, it might be, I'm not good enough.
These are the automatic thoughts we talked about. The key is to start recognizing them in the moment. It's like being a detective for your own mind. You're looking for clues.
So, the process would be, first, notice a strong emotion. Second, pause and identify the thought linked to that emotion. Is that about right?
That's the core of it. And at first, this can feel challenging. Our thoughts move so quickly. It's like trying to catch a hummingbird. But with practice, you get better. You start to anticipate when those thoughts might appear.
I imagine it's also helpful to have a way to record these thoughts, so you don't just think them and then forget them.
Absolutely. This is where thought records come in. They're simple tools to help you capture these fleeting thoughts. You can use a notebook, a simple sheet of paper, or even an app on your phone.
Could you walk us through what a basic thought record might look like?
Certainly. Let's break it down into simple steps. First, you'll want a column for the situation. This is simply describing what was happening when you noticed the emotion. For example, eating dinner alone or receiving that email.
Okay, so the context. What's next?
Then, you'll have a column for the emotion. Here, you name the feeling you experienced. Be specific. Instead of just bad, try sad, frustrated, worried, or lonely.
Got it.
Naming the emotion helps to clarify it, doesn't it?
It really does. It makes it more concrete. And then, the most important part for this episode, the automatic thought column. This is where you write down the exact thought that popped into your head when you felt that emotion in that situation.
So, if I was eating dinner alone and felt lonely, my automatic thought might be something like, everyone else's plans tonight.
Perfect example. And remember, the goal here isn't to judge the thought or to try and prove it right or wrong. It's simply to capture it. Think of yourself as a neutral observer. You're just documenting what appears in your mental landscape.
It's like you're journaling your mind's conversations.
Exactly. And as you practice this, you'll start to see patterns. You might notice that certain situations consistently trigger similar emotions, and those emotions are often linked to a particular set of automatic thoughts.
So the thought record isn't just for catching individual thoughts. but for spotting recurring themes.
Precisely. And these themes often relate back to the cognitive distortions we discussed. You might start seeing that your automatic thought, everyone else's plans tonight, fits the distortion of mind reading or fortune telling.
That's a great connection back to our previous discussion. So, to recap the thought catching process, you notice an emotion, you pause, you identify the automatic thought connected to it, and then you record it in a thought record.
You've got it. And here are a few practical tips to make this easier. First, start small. You don't need to be catching every single thought all day. Aim for one or two significant moments each day.
That feels much more manageable.
Also, be patient with yourself. This is a skill, and like any skill, it takes practice. There will be times when you realize you had a thought but didn't catch it, and that's okay. Just acknowledge it and try again.
It's about progress, not perfection.
Absolutely. And try to be curious, not critical. Approach your thoughts with a sense of gentle exploration rather than judgment. You're not trying to beat yourself up for having certain thoughts. You're just trying to understand them.
That shift in perspective from judgment to curiosity sounds really powerful. It's like opening a door instead of putting up a wall.
Well said, Lisa. And as you get more comfortable, you can start to expand your practice. Maybe you'll notice thoughts not just when you feel strong emotions, but also during neutral or even positive moments. This gives you a fuller picture of your thinking patterns.
So, to summarize what we've covered today, thought catching is the vital practice of becoming aware of and identifying our automatic thoughts, especially those linked to strong emotions. We use thought records as a tool to capture these thoughts, noting the situation, the emotion, and the specific automatic thought itself.
And by consistently practicing thought catching, we begin to see the patterns in our thinking, which are often the root of our emotional experiences. This awareness is the essential first step towards being able to challenge and reframe those thoughts.
It's like building a foundation. You can't fix what you don't see, and thought catching is our way of bringing those hidden mental processes into the light.
Exactly right. So, for this week, practice simply noticing. When you feel a strong emotion, ask yourself, what was I just thinking? And if you can, jot it down.
It's an ongoing conversation with yourself, and learning to listen is the first step to changing the narrative.
Well put. Next, we'll take this newfound awareness and learn how to become our own evidence-based detectives, challenging those automatic thoughts.
Looking forward to it.
That's all for today on Mind Over Mood. Next episode, challenging negative thoughts with evidence. Welcome back. Last time, we explored the crucial skill of thought catching, learning to observe those automatic negative thoughts as they pop into our minds.
It was fascinating to realize how often our thoughts aren't necessarily facts, but just thoughts, and sometimes not very helpful ones.
Exactly, Lisa. And that brings us perfectly to today's topic, challenging those negative thoughts with evidence. This is where we transition from simply noticing our thoughts to actively questioning them, much like a detective gathering clues.
Becoming our own detectives, I like that. So, if a negative thought pops up, our job isn't just to accept it, but to investigate it?
Precisely. Think of your automatic negative thoughts as hypotheses. They're ideas or beliefs you've formed, often quickly and without much conscious effort. But hypotheses need to be tested, right? You wouldn't accept a scientific theory without evidence, and you shouldn't accept a negative thought without examining its validity.
That makes so much sense. So, for this investigation, what kind of evidence are we looking for?
We're looking for two main types of evidence: evidence for the thought and evidence against the thought. It's about gathering all the facts, not just the ones that seem to support your initial negative idea.
Okay, let's say my automatic thought is, I'm going to fail this presentation tomorrow. What would be evidence for that thought?
Well, you might recall a time in the past when you felt unprepared for a presentation and it didn't go as well as you hoped. Or perhaps you're feeling overwhelmed by the amount of material you still need to review. These are real feelings and past occurrences that could lend some weight to that thought.
Got it. So, past experiences or current feelings of unpreparedness. Now, what about evidence against that thought? I'm going to fail this presentation tomorrow? This is where the detective work really kicks in, I imagine.
Absolutely. Evidence against involves looking at objective facts and probabilities. Have you successfully given presentations before? What was the feedback you received then? Are you well prepared in other aspects of your life? Do you have a track record of facing challenges and overcoming them?
Oh, that's a good point. I did give a presentation last month, and my manager said I did a really good job explaining the project. And I've actually spent a lot of time preparing the slides for tomorrow. That's evidence against failing, for sure.
Exactly. You're starting to see. It's easy for our minds to fixate on the one potential negative outcome, especially when we're feeling anxious. Gathering evidence against the thought helps to broaden our perspective and introduce reality checks. We're asking ourselves, is this thought 100% true? Is it the only possible outcome? Is it based on facts or feelings?
So, it's about distinguishing between what we feel is true and what is objectively true. This seems like it requires a bit of detachment, almost like you're analyzing someone else's situation.
That's a wonderful way to put it. Detachment is key. When you can step back and view your thoughts as neutral hypotheses, rather than absolute truths, you gain power. You're no longer being dictated by your negative thoughts. You're evaluating them.
What if someone struggles to find evidence against their negative thought? It feels so real.
That's common, especially when a negative belief is deeply entrenched. In those cases, we can ask ourselves, what would I tell a friend if they were having this thought? We tend to be much more objective and compassionate when advising others. Another technique is to consider the opposite thought. If the thought is, I'm going to fail, the opposite is, I'm going to succeed. What evidence supports that thought?
That's a great strategy. It forces us to look for positive possibilities we might have overlooked. It's like turning over every stone in the investigation.
Precisely. And remember, the goal here isn't to convince yourself that everything is perfect. It's about finding a more balanced and realistic perspective. Sometimes there might be a little truth to the negative thought, but it's often exaggerated or taken out of context. Our job is to find that balance.
So, to recap our detective work, when a negative automatic thought pops up, we first acknowledge it. Then, we act like a detective, gathering evidence. We look for what supports the thought and, crucially, what challenges the thought. We consider objective facts, past successes, and even what we'd tell a friend.
That's a perfect summary, Lisa. And by consistently doing this, we start to weaken the power of those negative thoughts. We learn that they're not facts, but rather interpretations that can be questioned and, quite often, disproven. This process helps to dismantle the roots of negative beliefs and build a more accurate, helpful internal narrative.
It's an active process, though. It requires effort and practice.
Absolutely. It's a skill, and like any skill, it improves with practice. Don't get discouraged if it feels difficult at first. The more you practice catching and challenging your thoughts, the more automatic it becomes. You're essentially rewiring your brain to default to more balanced thinking.
Rewiring our brains, that's the ultimate goal, isn't it? To shift from automatic negative responses to more considered, positive ones.
It is. And this practice of challenging negative thoughts with evidence is a cornerstone of that shift. It equips you with the critical thinking tools necessary to dismantle unhelpful beliefs and build a more resilient emotional foundation.
So, next time a negative thought strikes, we'll put on our detective hats and start gathering evidence. It's not about denying the negative, but about seeing the full, realistic picture.
Exactly. We're not just looking for flaws, we're seeking accuracy. This leads naturally into our next step, reframing those thoughts once we've challenged them. Next episode, reframing your perspective, finding alternative interpretations. Welcome back to Mind Over Mood. In our last episode, we learned to become expert observers of our own thoughts, meticulously gathering evidence to challenge those pesky negative beliefs.
That's right, Alex. We moved from simply having negative thoughts to actively questioning them. It felt empowering to see we don't just have to accept whatever our inner monologue throws at us. We can put those thoughts on trial and look for the facts.
Exactly. And that foundation of questioning and evidence gathering leads us beautifully into today's topic, reframing your perspective. This is where we learn to find alternative and often more balanced interpretations of events. It's about transforming potentially upsetting situations into opportunities for growth and insight.
So, we've challenged the negative thought, and now we're looking for a different way to see the same situation? It sounds like moving from a dark room to finding a window.
That's a fantastic analogy, Lisa. Think about it. When we're stuck in a negative loop, we're often experiencing tunnel vision. We see only the worst-case scenario, the personal slight, or the dire consequence. Reframing is about widening that lens. It's about consciously seeking out other possibilities, other angles, other meanings.
And this is different from just telling ourselves to think positive, which sometimes feels a bit forced.
Absolutely. This isn't about forced positivity or unrealistic optimism. It's about realistic optimism, about finding a balanced and more helpful way to view things. It's grounded in the evidence we gathered in the previous episode. If the evidence doesn't fully support the most catastrophic interpretation, then other interpretations are possible, aren't they?
They are. So, how do we actually do this reframing? Where do we start?
A great starting point is to ask yourself, what are three other possible ways to look at this situation? This simple question immediately encourages your brain to think beyond the initial, often negative, reaction.
Okay, three other ways. Let's say I'm late for an appointment and my automatic thought is, I'm so unreliable and always mess things up. My negative interpretation is that I'm a failure. So, what would be three alternative interpretations?
That's a perfect example, Lisa. So, you have the initial thought, I'm unreliable. Our goal is to find three other ways to see this specific instance of being late. One alternative could be, things happen. Traffic is unpredictable, and sometimes delays are unavoidable for reasons outside my control. This acknowledges external factors.
Right? It removes the blame from me completely and places it on circumstances.
Exactly. Another alternative could be, while I'm frustrated about being late, I can still learn from this. Next time, I'll set my alarm 10 minutes earlier. This focuses on future improvement and learning, rather than dwelling on past failure.
Oh, I like that one. It turns a negative event into a lesson.
And a third alternative interpretation could be, my lateness might be inconvenient for the other person, but doesn't define my entire character or my overall reliability. I'm usually punctual. This contextualizes the lateness, reminding you that an isolated incident doesn't negate your general behavior. It stops us from generalizing one mistake to our entire identity.
Wow, those are significantly different from, I'm a failure. They're much more manageable and less damaging to my self-esteem. So, the key is to shift from a personal, global, and permanent interpretation to one that is more situational, less personal, and potentially temporary.
Precisely. You've hit on a core principle. Cognitive behavioral therapy often talks about the personalization, generalization, and maximization of negative events. Reframing is the antidote to that. We're actively working against personalizing everything, against generalizing one event into a pattern of failure, and against maximizing the negative impact.
So, if my initial thought is highly emotional and catastrophic, reframing helps me to de-escalate that emotional intensity by finding a more neutral or even positive interpretation of the facts.
Yes, it helps to regulate your emotions by changing the thoughts that fuel them. It's like putting on a different pair of glasses. Instead of seeing the world through a filter of doom and gloom, you're choosing to see it through a lens of possibility, problem solving, and understanding. It's a powerful tool for emotional resilience.
Can you give us another example, perhaps something more interpersonal?
Certainly. Imagine your friend doesn't respond to your text message immediately. Your automatic thought might be, they're ignoring me. They must be mad at me.
Oh, that's a common one for me. And my immediate feeling is anxiety or hurt.
And that feeling fuels the thought, creating a loop. Now let's reframe. What are three other interpretations of your friend not responding right away?
Okay. 1. Maybe they're just busy. They might be in a meeting, driving, or dealing with something urgent and can't respond at that exact moment. 2. Perhaps they saw the text but planned to respond later when they had more time to give it a proper answer. They don't want to give a rushed reply. And 3. Maybe they're simply not glued to their phone like I am. Some people aren't constantly checking notifications.
Excellent. See how different those interpretations are from, they're ignoring me because they're mad. These alternatives are far less likely to trigger intense negative emotions. They are more likely to lead to patience, understanding, or a simple follow-up text later.
It's amazing how much power our interpretation has. It's not necessarily the event itself, but how we interpret the event that causes our distress.
That's a profound realization, Lisa, and it's at the heart of cognitive reframing. We're not denying reality, but we are choosing a more helpful and accurate way to perceive it, especially when our initial perception is skewed by negative bias. This skill can transform how we experience everyday interactions and challenges. It's about recognizing that most situations are complex and rarely have just one single negative meaning.
So, to recap, reframing is about actively seeking out alternative interpretations of a situation. We do this by asking questions like, what are three other ways to look at this? This helps us move away from automatic, negative, and often inaccurate interpretations towards more balanced, realistic, and constructive perspectives. It's like choosing a more beneficial lens through which to view the world, especially when our initial emotional response clouds our judgment.
Exactly. By practicing reframing, you're not just changing your thoughts, you're changing your emotional experience and your overall outlook. You're building a more resilient and adaptable mind.
It really empowers you to take back control from those automatic negative thought patterns we talked about earlier. It's a crucial step in rewiring our emotional compass.
It absolutely is. Next episode, the thought feeling behavior cycle, a deeper dive. Welcome back to Mind Over Mood. Last time, we explored how to challenge those tricky negative thoughts we identified. Today, we're going to take that understanding a significant step further and dive into something called the thought-feeling behavior cycle. It's a powerful concept that really shows us how interconnected our inner world is.
I'm ready. We've talked a lot about thoughts influencing feelings and feelings influencing our actions, but I think a deeper dive into how it all works together will be super helpful. It's like seeing the whole interconnected web, not just individual threads.
Exactly. So, remember that simple model we introduced early on? It showed how our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors influence each other. Today, we're going to look at how this connection can create a loop, a cycle, and how that cycle can either be a positive one, lifting us up, or a negative one, dragging us down.
A loop. I like that image. So, a negative thought leads to a negative feeling, which then leads to a certain behavior, and that behavior then feeds back into the original negative thought.
You've got it. Let's break it down with an example. Imagine you're feeling a bit down and you have a thought like, I'm not good enough. What's the immediate feeling that might arise from that thought? Lisa?
Well, if I think I'm not good enough, I'd probably feel sad, maybe a bit anxious, and definitely discouraged.
Perfect. So, the thought, I'm not good enough, leads to feelings of sadness and discouragement. Now, knowing that, what kind of behavior might someone engage in when they're feeling sad and discouraged? What would be a common response?
When I feel like that, I tend to want to withdraw. I might avoid a social gathering or put off a task I know I should be doing. I might just want to stay in bed or distract myself with something easy.
That's a very relatable response. So, if you avoid a social gathering because you feel discouraged, or you put off that important task, what does that behavior do to your original thought and feeling?
Oh, I see where this is going. If I avoid going out, I miss out on potential positive interactions that could have made me feel better. If I put off the task, it's still there, looming, maybe even getting worse, which would then reinforce the feeling of not being good enough and strengthen the thought that I can't handle things.
Precisely. You've just described the negative cycle. The thought, I'm not good enough, leads to sadness and discouragement. This feeling prompts the behavior of withdrawal or avoidance. This avoidance then provides evidence to your brain that you are indeed not good enough, or that you can't handle situations, thus strengthening the original negative thought and making you feel even worse. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy of negativity.
Wow, that's a powerful illustration. It's like a spiral going downwards. So, this cycle is not just about thoughts and feelings in isolation, but how they interact to create persistent patterns.
Absolutely. And the crucial point is that this cycle feeds itself. The more we engage in these unhelpful behaviors, the more they reinforce the negative thoughts and feelings. It becomes a habit, a default setting, and it can be hard to break free from. Think of it like walking the same path in the grass so many times that a clear trail forms. It becomes the easiest route, even if it's not the best one.
That makes so much sense. I can definitely recognize that in my own life. I might have a thought about something being too difficult, feel overwhelmed, and then procrastinate. And the longer I procrastinate, the more overwhelming it feels, and the more I think, see, I knew I couldn't do it. It's a vicious circle.
It is. But the good news is by understanding this cycle, we gain the power to disrupt it. We can choose to intervene at any point in the loop. We can't always control the initial automatic thought, but we can learn to observe it without immediately believing it. We can also challenge the feeling it generates, and most importantly, we can choose a different behavior.
So, instead of withdrawing when I feel discouraged, I could choose to do something different? Even something small?
Exactly. This is where behavioral activation comes in. But for now, let's imagine that instead of withdrawing when you have the thought, I'm not good enough, and feel discouraged, you decide to do one small, manageable task. Maybe it's making your bed or sending a quick email. What would that small action do?
That small action might not instantly erase the feeling of not being good enough, but it would be a step in a different direction. It would be a tiny piece of evidence that I can do things, that I can take action. That could then lessen the discouragement just a little bit.
You're getting it. That small success, that tiny piece of evidence that you can act, can slightly shift your feeling. And if your feeling shifts, even a little, your next thought might be less prone to being, I'm not good enough. It becomes, okay, I did that one thing. Maybe I could do another. It's about interrupting the downward spiral and starting to create an upward one.
So, it's not about always having positive thoughts, but about recognizing the cycle and choosing actions that build momentum in a more positive direction, which then, in turn, helps shift our thoughts and feelings. It's a proactive approach.
Precisely. It's about building awareness of that thought-feeling behavior cycle. When you notice yourself feeling a certain way, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, what was the thought that preceded this feeling? And what behavior is this feeling prompting me to do? Once you can identify these components, you can start to make conscious choices.
This concept of the cycle really solidifies why we've been talking about challenging thoughts and changing behaviors. They aren't just independent strategies, they are parts of a larger system that we can influence.
Absolutely. It's a holistic view. Negative thoughts can lead to unhelpful emotions, which can drive unhelpful behaviors. That unhelpful behavior then reinforces the negative thoughts and emotions, creating a loop that can be difficult to escape. But by understanding this, we can intervene. We can choose to act differently, even when we don't feel like it. And in doing so, we can begin to change the entire cycle.
So, to recap, the thought-feeling behavior cycle shows how our thoughts, emotions, and actions are continuously influencing each other. A negative thought can trigger negative feelings, leading to behaviors that reinforce those initial thoughts and feelings, creating a downward spiral. However, by recognizing this cycle, we can choose to break it by acting differently, which can then influence our feelings and thoughts in a more positive direction.
Well said, Lisa. It's a powerful tool for understanding ourselves and for making lasting changes. Next episode, behavioral activation, taking action to improve mood. Welcome back. Last time, we dug into challenging negative thoughts, learning to be our own detective and reframe our perspectives. Today, we're shifting gears to a crucial part of rewiring our emotional compass, taking action. We're talking about behavioral activation.
Behavioral activation. That sounds like it gets right to the heart of things, Alex. We've spent a lot of time in our heads, haven't we? It feels like a good time to step out into the world.
Exactly, Lisa. So often, when we're feeling down, our first instinct is to withdraw. We stop doing the things we used to enjoy, or even the things we just need to do. This withdrawal, this lack of action, actually makes us feel worse, creating a bit of a vicious cycle. Behavioral activation is all about breaking that cycle by intentionally re-engaging in activities.
So, it's about doing things even when you don't feel like it? That sounds tough when you're in a low mood. It feels easier to stay on the couch.
It absolutely can feel tough, and that's where the activation part comes in. It's about taking that first step. The core idea is that our mood is heavily influenced by our behavior. When we engage in activities that are either pleasurable or give us a sense of accomplishment, our mood tends to improve. And here's the kicker. Sometimes we have to do the activity before we feel motivated to do it. The action itself can generate the motivation.
That's a really important point. We often wait for motivation to strike, but you're saying action can actually create motivation. Can you give us an example?
Imagine you haven't seen friends in a while because you've been feeling quite low. Your impulse might be to stay home. But if you decide to activate, you might call a friend, arrange a coffee, or even just send a text. Even though you didn't feel like doing it initially, afterwards, you might feel a sense of connection, a bit more energy, and your mood lifts. That positive experience then makes it easier to reach out again.
So, it's not about forcing yourself into something miserable, but about choosing activities that, even if they seem like a chore, have a positive outcome for your mood in the long run?
Precisely. We can categorize these activities into two main types: pleasure-based activities and accomplishment-based activities. Pleasure-based activities are pretty straightforward, things that you genuinely enjoy. Think about hobbies, listening to music, spending time in nature, or even just enjoying a good cup of tea.
Ah, the simple joys. Those are easy to let slide when you're feeling overwhelmed.
They are. And accomplishment-based activities are those that give you a sense of mastery or achievement. This could be anything from completing a work task, tidying up your living space, learning something new, or even exercising. These might not always feel immediately pleasurable, but the feeling of having done something and done it well can be incredibly mood boosting.
I see. So, it's a two-pronged approach. We're not just seeking fleeting pleasure, but also building a sense of competence and control.
Exactly. Now, how do we actually implement this? The very first step is building awareness. We need to identify what activities are truly important and enjoyable for us. In earlier discussions, we talked about understanding your emotional landscape and identifying your values. This is where that comes back. What activities align with your values? What used to bring you joy? What tasks, when completed, leave you feeling good about yourself?
So, it might not be the same for everyone. What brings me pleasure might be different from what brings you pleasure.
Absolutely. And that's why self-reflection is key. You might want to grab a notebook and jot down a list. Think about specific things you used to do or things you've seen others do that you think you might enjoy. Don't censor yourself at this stage. Just brainstorm.
Okay, brainstorming. I can do that. What's the next step after we have our list?
The next step is to start scheduling. This is where behavioral activation really becomes a practice. It's about making appointments with yourself for these activities. Just like you would schedule a doctor's appointment or a meeting with a colleague, you schedule time for your mood-boosting activities. And the key here is to be specific. Instead of just writing read a book, you might write read one chapter of my book from 7 p.m. to 7:30 p.m.
Scheduling them. That makes them feel more concrete and less like a vague someday. And it sounds like it requires a bit of planning ahead.
It does. And it's also helpful to start small. If you're feeling very low and the thought of an hour-long activity feels overwhelming, commit to just 5 or 10 minutes. The goal is to build momentum and experience success. Even short, positive engagement can create a ripple effect.
Start small, be specific, and schedule it. Those are great, actionable takeaways. What if we schedule something and then when the time comes, we still really don't feel like doing it? It's easy to let it slide.
That's a very common challenge, and it's where we need to lean into the activation again. Think of it as an experiment. Tell yourself, I will just try this for 5 minutes. If after 5 minutes I still feel terrible, I can stop. More often than not, once you've started, you'll find it easier to continue. The inertia of starting is often the biggest hurdle.
So, it's about committing to just the initial step, the just started phase.
Yes, and it's also important to track your progress and notice the impact. After you've engaged in an activity, take a moment to ask yourself, how do I feel now compared to before? Did your mood shift even slightly? Did you feel more energized or more at peace? Keeping a simple activity log can be incredibly powerful for reinforcing the connection between your actions and your emotional state.
That makes sense. Seeing the results, even small ones, can be really motivating. It builds that evidence base we've talked about for challenging negative beliefs about ourselves.
Absolutely. It provides tangible proof that taking action does make a difference. And remember, this is a skill, and like any skill, it takes practice. There will be days when it feels harder than others. The progress may not always be linear, but the consistent effort to integrate activating behaviors into your life is a powerful tool for improving and stabilizing your mood. It's about actively participating in your own well-being, rather than waiting for your mood to magically improve.
So, to recap, behavioral activation is about intentionally engaging in activities that bring pleasure or a sense of accomplishment, even when we don't feel motivated. We identify these activities, schedule them specifically, start small, and then observe the impact. It's about action creating motivation and behavior influencing mood.
That's a perfect summary, Lisa. It's about becoming the architect of your own emotional resilience. What we do has a profound effect on how we feel.
I love that framing, Alex. Taking an active role in our own happiness.
Indeed. Next episode, mindfulness and emotional awareness, being present with your feelings. Welcome back to Mind Over Mood. Last time, we explored the incredibly powerful concept of behavioral activation. Remember how taking action, even when you don't feel like it, can profoundly shift your mood? We talked about not waiting for motivation, but using action as the generator of motivation.
Absolutely. It's like jump-starting a car. You don't need the engine to be running perfectly to start. You just need that initial spark. Today, we're going to talk about a practice that can help us create even more of those sparks and handle the times when the engine splutters: mindfulness and emotional awareness.
That's right, Lisa. Mindfulness is essentially about paying attention, on purpose, to the present moment, without judgment. It's an incredible skill that helps us understand our emotions, our thoughts, and our physical sensations in a completely new way. Think of it as turning down the volume on that automatic, often critical, inner monologue we've discussed.
So, instead of getting swept away by a feeling, mindfulness helps us notice it, acknowledge it, and understand it better, like observing a cloud passing in the sky rather than being caught in a storm.
Exactly. We often react to our emotions on autopilot. A negative thought pops up, and immediately we feel a wave of anxiety or sadness. Mindfulness interrupts that cycle. It gives us a pause, a space between the thought or feeling and our reaction to it. This space is where our power to choose our response lies.
I recall when we discussed cognitive distortions, those common thinking traps our brains fall into. It seems like mindfulness would be a really useful tool for catching those distortions in the act.
You're spot on, Lisa. Catching those automatic negative thoughts is the first step in challenging them, and mindfulness trains our minds to be better observers. It's like developing a keener sense of sight to spot the distortions when they appear. Remember thought catching? Mindfulness is like upgrading the quality of your mental binoculars.
So, how do we actually do this? I imagine for many listeners, the idea of being present might sound a little abstract or even difficult when emotions are running high.
It can feel that way at first, but the beauty of mindfulness is that it doesn't require grand gestures or hours of meditation. We can integrate simple practices into our daily lives. One of the most accessible is focusing on our breath. When you feel overwhelmed, or even when you're just going about your day, take a moment to just notice your breathing. Feel the air coming in, feel it going out.
Just that?
That sounds simple.
It is, and that's its strength. Our breath is always with us, a constant anchor to the present moment. As you focus on your breath, you'll notice your mind will wander. That's completely normal. The practice isn't about stopping your thoughts. It's about noticing when your mind has wandered and gently guiding it back to your breath without self-criticism.
So it's about the returning to the breath, not about perfect focus. That makes it feel much more attainable.
Precisely. Each time you notice your mind wandering and bring it back, you're strengthening your mindfulness muscle. This practice of noticing and returning builds our ability to observe our thoughts and feelings without immediately getting caught up in them. Another technique is a body scan. This involves bringing your awareness to different parts of your body, noticing any sensations, warmth, coolness, tension, or relaxation, without trying to change them.
A body scan, so you're essentially tuning into your physical experience? I can see how that would help connect us to what's happening now, in our physical selves.
Exactly. Often, emotions manifest physically. When we're anxious, we might feel a tightness in our chest. When we're sad, we might feel a heaviness. By doing a body scan, we can become more aware of these subtle physical cues. This awareness can give us early warning signs that an emotional shift is happening, allowing us to respond more intentionally rather than reactively.
This sounds like it's about developing a kinder relationship with our inner experience. Instead of fighting difficult emotions, we learn to be with them.
That's a wonderful way to put it, Lisa. It's about cultivating non-judgmental awareness. When you notice a thought like, I'm not good enough, instead of immediately believing it and feeling terrible, the mindful approach is to acknowledge it. You might think, there's that thought again. I'm not good enough. You're observing it, recognizing it as a mental event rather than a fundamental truth about yourself.
So, you're creating distance. You're not the thought. You're the one having the thought.
Yes, and that distance is so crucial for challenging those cognitive distortions we talked about. If you can observe a distorted thought without immediately identifying with it, you're in a much better position to question its validity. Remember how we talked about looking for evidence? Mindfulness helps us to first see the thought clearly, so we can then begin to investigate it.
I can already see how this would reduce that feeling of being overwhelmed. When you're not constantly battling your thoughts and feelings, there's a sense of relief, isn't there?
Definitely. And it's not just about reducing the negative. It's also about enhancing our appreciation for the positive. Mindfulness helps us to truly savor pleasant experiences. When something good happens, instead of just letting it pass by, we can mindfully notice it, the warmth of the sun, the taste of a good meal, a kind word from a friend. This cultivates gratitude and can really boost our overall well-being.
So, to recap for our listeners, mindfulness is about intentionally focusing our attention on the present moment without judgment. We can practice this by focusing on our breath, doing body scans, and simply observing our thoughts and feelings as mental events rather than identifying with them.
That's a perfect summary, Lisa. This practice helps us to catch those automatic negative thoughts, including cognitive distortions, more effectively. It creates a valuable pause between an emotional trigger and our reaction, giving us more choice in how we respond. And crucially, it allows us to be more present with both pleasant and unpleasant experiences, fostering greater emotional intelligence and a more balanced mood.
It really sounds like a foundational practice for building emotional resilience. It's about becoming a more conscious observer of your own internal world.
Absolutely. And the more we practice, the more this awareness becomes second nature. It's a journey, and every moment we practice, we're building a stronger, more balanced emotional compass.
Fantastic. So, after exploring how to activate positive actions last time, today we've learned how to cultivate a more mindful and aware presence with our feelings and thoughts.
Precisely. Problem-solving skills for emotional resilience is our topic. Welcome back. Today, we're diving into a skill that dramatically improves emotional resilience, effective problem solving.
That's so true, Alex. Sometimes just the idea of a looming problem can make us feel dread. So, how do we tackle this? Is it about being a super genius problem solver?
Not at all. It's about having a structured approach that anyone can learn. We're going to walk through a practical, step-by-step method. The goal isn't necessarily to get a perfect, immediate solution every time, but to feel more confident in our ability to face challenges and, in doing so, reduce the emotional distress they cause.
So, it's more about the process and empowering ourselves? I like that. Where do we start?
We start with the very first, crucial step, clearly defining the problem. This might sound obvious, but it's surprisingly easy to get this wrong. We often jump to solutions without fully understanding what we're trying to solve.
I can see that.
It's like trying to fix a leaky faucet when the real issue is a burst pipe.
Exactly. So, problem definition involves asking ourselves, what is the specific issue I'm facing? What are the concrete facts, not just my feelings about it? Try to be as objective as possible. Instead of saying, I'm overwhelmed by work, try to specify, I have 3 urgent projects due by Friday, and I'm struggling to allocate my time effectively to complete them all.
Ah, so moving from a vague feeling to a tangible situation. That makes the problem feel more manageable.
Precisely. Once we have a clear definition, the next step is brainstorming potential solutions. And here's the key. This is a no-judgment zone. We want to generate as many ideas as possible, no matter how wild or impractical they might seem at first. Think quantity over quality at this stage.
So, Just let the ideas flow without censoring ourselves? That can be liberating.
Absolutely. You might doodle, make a list, talk it out with someone, whatever helps you get ideas out of your head and into the open. For our overwhelmed by work example, potential solutions could range from asking for an extension, delegating tasks, working a few extra hours, breaking down the projects into smaller steps, or even exploring if any tasks can be postponed or dropped.
Okay, I'm picturing a big whiteboard filled with all sorts of possibilities. It feels empowering to see options laid out.
It really does. Now, after we brainstormed, we move into the evaluation phase. This is where we start to get realistic. We'll look at all those brainstorm solutions and assess them. What are the pros and cons of each? What are the potential outcomes? Is this solution realistic given my resources, time, and skills?
This is where we filter out the wildly impractical ones, right?
That's right. We're looking for solutions that are not only feasible, but also likely to lead to a positive outcome. Consider the effort involved, the potential impact, and any risks associated with each option. It can be helpful to even rank them or narrow them down to your top two or three.
So, we've defined it, brainstormed, and evaluated. What comes next?
The next step is selecting the best solution. Based on your evaluation, choose the option that seems most promising, most realistic, and most likely to achieve your desired outcome. Sometimes, the best solution might be a combination of a few different ideas.
This feels like a really decisive moment. It's about making a commitment to a course of action.
It is. And that commitment leads us directly into implementation. This is where we put our chosen solution into action. It's important to break down larger actions into smaller, manageable steps. This makes the process less daunting and gives you opportunities to celebrate small wins along the way.
So, for the work example, implementation might mean creating a detailed task list for each project, scheduling specific time blocks for each, and sending out those emails to ask for help or extensions.
Exactly. And as you implement, it's vital to monitor your progress. Are the steps working as you expected? Is the solution having the desired effect? This is where we remain flexible. If the initial solution isn't working, don't get discouraged. Go back to your evaluation or even your brainstorming list and try a different approach. Problem solving is often an iterative process.
That's a really important point about flexibility. It's not a one and done deal. We can adapt as we go.
Absolutely. And finally, after implementation, we take time to review. What did you learn from this process? What worked well? What could you do differently next time? This reflection helps solidify the skills and builds your confidence for future challenges.
So, to recap for our listeners, first, we define the problem clearly. Then, we brainstorm a wide range of solutions without judgment. Next, we evaluate those solutions by considering their pros and cons. Fourth, we select the best solution or combination of solutions. Fifth, we implement our chosen plan, breaking it down into manageable steps if needed.
Sixth, we monitor our progress and are ready to adapt if the solution isn't working. And finally, we review and learn from the entire experience. This structured problem-solving approach isn't just about fixing issues. It's a powerful tool for reducing stress and anxiety. When you know you have a method for tackling difficulties, the anticipation of those difficulties loses much of its power.
It builds confidence, doesn't it? Knowing you have a system, a toolkit, to face whatever comes your way. It helps us feel less helpless and more capable.
Precisely. It's about proactive engagement rather than reactive worry. By actively addressing problems, we're not only resolving immediate issues, but also strengthening our psychological resilience, making us better equipped to handle future emotional challenges. This skill is fundamental to maintaining a balanced and optimistic outlook, which is, of course, at the heart of mind over mood.
It's like building a mental muscle. The more you practice this problem-solving process, the stronger and more automatic it becomes.
You've got it. And remember, you don't have to be perfect. The act of engaging with the problem in a structured way is the victory in itself. So, Try to pause and apply this problem-solving framework the next time you feel those difficult emotions rising. You might be surprised at how much more in control you feel.
Excellent advice, Alex. We've covered so much ground in understanding our emotional landscape and how to actively shape our responses.
Indeed, we have. Building on this, our next episode focuses on building healthy habits for lasting mood optimization. Next episode, building healthy habits for lasting mood optimization. Welcome back to Mind Over Mood. Last time, we explored behavioral activation, all about taking consistent action to improve your mood, even when you don't feel like it.
Absolutely. And today, we're building on that by talking about something crucial for making those positive changes stick: building healthy habits. As powerful as behavioral activation is, it's the consistent, ingrained habits that truly lead to lasting mood optimization.
Exactly, Lisa. Think of it like this. Behavioral activation is like planting a seed and watering it. Building healthy habits is like creating a fertile garden where that seed can truly flourish and become a strong, resilient plant. It's about creating sustainable routines that support our emotional well-being long-term.
That's a great way to put it. So, what are some of these foundational healthy habits that can make such a difference?
We can break them down into a few key areas that have a profound impact on our mood and overall mental health. The first, and arguably one of the most critical, is sleep.
Ah, sleep. The thing many of us struggle with, but we all know we need more of.
Precisely. When we don't get enough quality sleep, our emotional regulation goes out the window. We become more irritable, more prone to negative thinking, and less able to cope with stress. It's like trying to run a marathon on an empty tank.
So, what does enough quality sleep actually look like?
For most adults, it's around 7 to 9 hours per night. But it's not just about the quantity, it's the quality. This means creating a consistent sleep schedule, even on weekends, and establishing a relaxing bedtime routine. Minimizing screen time before bed, creating a dark and quiet sleep environment, and avoiding caffeine late in the day all contribute to better sleep quality.
So, a consistent sleep schedule is key, and making our bedroom a sleep sanctuary. What's the next pillar?
Movement, regular physical activity. We touched on this with behavioral activation, but it's so much more than just an activity to combat low mood. Exercise is a powerful mood booster in its own right, releasing endorphins that act as natural mood elevators.
And it doesn't have to be running a marathon, right?
Not at all. It could be a brisk walk, dancing, gardening, or any activity you enjoy that gets your body moving. The goal is consistency. Aim for at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic activity per week, or 75 minutes of vigorous activity, plus muscle strengthening activities twice a week. But again, start where you are and build up. Even a 10-minute walk can make a difference.
I love that emphasis on finding something enjoyable. It makes it feel less like a chore and more like self-care. What about what we put into our bodies? Nutrition.
Nutrition is absolutely fundamental. What we eat directly impacts our brain chemistry, energy levels, and mood. A diet rich in whole foods, fruits, vegetables, lean proteins, and healthy fats provide the nutrients our brain needs to function optimally.
And conversely, processed foods, sugar, and excessive caffeine can lead to energy crashes and mood swings.
You've got it. It's about balance. Focusing on a balanced diet helps stabilize blood sugar levels, which in turn helps stabilize our mood. Think of it as fueling your emotional engine with high-quality fuel. It's not about perfection, but about making conscious, healthier choices more often than not.
So we've got sleep, movement, and nutrition. What else is crucial for building these resilient habits?
Social connection. Humans are inherently social beings. Meaningful connections with others are vital for our emotional well-being. Loneliness and isolation can have a significant negative impact on mood and even physical health.
That makes sense. When we feel connected and supported, we feel more secure and less alone in our struggles.
Exactly. This habit involves actively nurturing your relationships. Make time for friends and family. Engage in conversations and participate in social activities. It doesn't mean you have to be an extrovert. Even small, consistent connections can make a big difference. Joining a club, volunteering, or even having regular coffee dates can foster these connections.
It's about being intentional about those interactions. So, we have sleep, movement, nutrition, and social connection. These are the cornerstones. But how do we actually build these habits so they become automatic? Because sometimes starting is the hardest part.
Great question, Lisa. One effective strategy is to start small. Don't try to overhaul your entire life overnight. Pick one habit and make it incredibly easy to start. For example, if you want to exercise more, start with a 5-minute walk each day. If you want to eat healthier, add one extra vegetable to your dinner plate. The idea is to build momentum.
Ah, the tiny habits approach, making it so easy you can't say no.
Precisely. Another powerful technique is habit stacking. This is where you link a new habit to an existing one. For instance, after you brush your teeth in the morning, something you likely do automatically, you could immediately do a few minutes of stretching. Or, after you finish your morning coffee, you could spend 5 minutes journaling.
That's clever. You leverage the momentum of an established routine.
Exactly. And don't forget the importance of tracking your progress. Whether it's a simple check mark in a planner or a more sophisticated app, seeing your consistency can be incredibly motivating. It visually reinforces the habit and helps you notice patterns. This connects back to what we discussed about behavioral activation, tracking those actions.
Seeing that streak grow can be a powerful motivator. What about when life gets in the way? Because it inevitably does.
That's where resilience comes in, and it ties into managing setbacks. But for habit building, it's about focusing on progress, not perfection. If you miss a day, don't beat yourself up. Just get back on track the next day. The goal is to get back to your routine as quickly as possible, rather than letting one slip up derail everything. This is crucial for long-term mood optimization.
So, it's about self-compassion and a commitment to getting back on the horse.
Absolutely. Remember, building healthy habits is a marathon, not a sprint. It takes time, patience, and self-awareness. By focusing on these foundational habits, sleep, movement, nutrition, and social connection, and employing strategies like starting small, habit stacking, and tracking progress, you're creating a robust system that supports your emotional well-being day in and day out. These are not just nice to haves. They are essential components of a resilient and optimistic mind.
It's about creating a foundation of self-care that makes us more resilient to life's challenges and helps us maintain a positive outlook. These are actionable steps we can all start integrating.
Indeed, we've covered the critical healthy habits that form the bedrock of lasting mood optimization, including the importance of quality sleep, regular physical activity, balanced nutrition, and strong social connections. We also explored practical strategies for building these habits, like starting small, habit stacking, and focusing on consistent progress over perfection. These habits create a powerful, supportive environment for your emotional well-being. Next episode, managing setbacks and maintaining progress. Welcome back to Mind Over Mood. We're diving into something incredibly important, managing setbacks and maintaining your progress.
That's such a crucial point, Alex. It's so easy to get discouraged when we hit a rough patch. We might think we've failed or that all the hard work we've put in has been for nothing. But as you've always said, progress isn't a straight line, is it? It's more like a winding road.
Exactly, Lisa. And that winding road is precisely why we need a strategy for dealing with those inevitable bumps. Think about it. Learning any new skill, whether it's playing an instrument or a new sport, involves practice, mistakes, and then getting better. Rewiring our emotional responses is no different. The first step is to absolutely normalize setbacks. They are not signs of failure. They're often vital learning opportunities.
Normalizing setbacks. I like that. So, instead of beating ourselves up, we should see them as just part of the process? Like a gardener seeing a wilting plant not as a total disaster, but as a sign to check the soil or the watering schedule.
That's a fantastic analogy. A gardener doesn't throw away the whole garden if one plant isn't thriving. They investigate, adjust, and nurture. We need to do the same with our emotional well-being. So, when a setback happens, maybe you notice you've fallen back into old negative thinking patterns or reacted impulsively. The first thing to do is pause. Don't just react with self-criticism. Take a breath.
A breath. Simple, but probably very effective in stopping that spiral of negativity. What's the next step after pausing?
The next step is to practice self-compassion. This is where we treat ourselves with the same kindness, care, and understanding we would offer a good friend who is going through a tough time. Instead of thinking, I'm so terrible at this, try something like, this is difficult, and it's okay that I'm struggling right now. Remind yourself that everyone faces challenges, and imperfection is part of being human.
Self-compassion. It sounds so simple, but I can imagine it's hard to access when you're feeling down on yourself. Is there a way to make it more concrete?
Absolutely. One technique is to ask yourself what you would say to a dear friend who was in your exact situation. Would you berate them? Likely not. You'd offer comfort, encouragement, and support. Try directing that same supportive inner dialogue toward yourself. You can also write down phrases that express kindness and understanding and keep them where you can see them. Simple affirmations like, I'm doing my best, or this is a temporary challenge.
That's a great tangible tip. So, pause, breathe, and then offer ourselves that compassionate voice. What's next for analyzing the setback itself?
Once we've created a gentler space for ourselves, we can begin to learn from the setback. This is where we become our own detectives, as we discussed earlier. Ask yourself, what triggered this? What specific thoughts, feelings, or situations were present? Were there external factors, or times when I might have been more vulnerable, like being tired or stressed?
And the goal here isn't to blame ourselves again, but to gather information, right? To understand the circumstances that led to the slip up.
Precisely. It's about identification, not condemnation. Understanding the triggers and circumstances helps us to anticipate future challenges and develop strategies to navigate them. For example, if you notice that you tend to fall into negative thinking after a poor night's sleep, you can prioritize sleep hygiene. Or if a certain social situation consistently leads to anxiety and a return of old patterns, you can plan ahead for how to manage that situation differently, perhaps by using some of the coping skills we've discussed.
So it's about building a more robust toolkit based on our own experiences. And then after we've learned from it, the next step is probably recommitting, isn't it?
That's the vital part, recommitting to the path. Setbacks can shake our confidence, making it harder to believe in our ability to change. Recommitment means consciously deciding to pick up the tools and techniques we've learned and apply them again. This might involve returning to simpler exercises, like practicing identifying automatic thoughts or revisiting a favorite mindfulness technique. It's about rebuilding momentum.
And that rebuilding momentum might not happen overnight. It might be a series of small steps.
Absolutely. It's about recommitting to the process, not expecting perfection. Sometimes recommitting is as simple as saying, okay, that didn't go as planned, but I'm going to try again today. I'm going to practice recognizing my thoughts, even if it's just for 5 minutes. It's about consistency, not intensity. And importantly, it's about not letting one setback derail your entire journey.
I think that's a really important distinction. We don't have to get it all right all the time. We just have to keep trying. And you mentioned earlier, Alex, about maintaining progress. How do we ensure that the skills we've learned become more ingrained over time, so setbacks become less frequent or less impactful?
That's where consistency and integration come in. We've covered a lot of ground, from understanding our emotional landscape to challenging negative thoughts, behavioral activation, and mindfulness. To maintain progress, these need to become integrated into your daily life. Think of it like building muscles. You don't go to the gym once and expect to be strong forever. You need to keep exercising.
So, regular practice of the techniques becomes key.
Precisely. Continue to regularly identify your automatic thoughts. Make it a habit to check in with your emotions. Practice challenging your distortions even when you're not in crisis. And importantly, continue to engage in activities that promote positive mood, as we discussed with behavioral activation. This proactive approach builds what we call emotional resilience.
Emotional resilience. So, it's like building up our defenses so that when challenges do arise, we're better equipped to handle them without getting knocked down.
Exactly. It's the ability to bounce back from adversity. And a crucial component of resilience is what we call managing expectations. We've talked a lot about the cognitive triangle, the link between thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. It's important to remember that this is a dynamic system. There will be good days and less good days. The goal isn't to eliminate negative feelings altogether, but to manage them effectively and to cultivate more positive experiences.
So, it's about developing a more balanced and realistic view of emotional health. Not aiming for constant happiness, but for a greater ability to navigate the full spectrum of human emotions.
That's a fantastic summary, Lisa. And this brings us back to the idea of progress not being linear. Embracing this concept helps us maintain motivation. When we accept that setbacks are part of the journey, we're less likely to get discouraged and more likely to persevere. Remember, every time you catch a negative thought, every time you challenge a distortion, every time you choose a more helpful behavior, you are reinforcing new neural pathways. You're actively rewiring your brain.
That's a really powerful idea. We are literally changing our brains with these practices. So, to recap for our listeners, when you experience a setback, first, normalize it, it's part of the process. Second, pause and breathe. Third, practice self-compassion, treating yourself with kindness. Fourth, analyze the setback to learn from it without self-blame. And fifth, recommit to using the skills and techniques you've learned, focusing on consistent practice.
That's it. And by integrating these strategies, you build resilience, manage expectations, and continue to make progress on your journey to rewiring your emotional compass. Remember, the goal is sustainable emotional well-being, and that includes learning how to navigate the inevitable bumps in the road.
Thank you, Alex. This has been incredibly helpful. We've covered so much in the series, and this episode on managing setbacks feels like a crucial piece of the puzzle for long-term success.
It truly is. Next, we'll be exploring the power of gratitude and the principles of positive psychology. Welcome back. Last time, we help you manage setbacks and keep making progress. Today, we're shifting gears to a truly uplifting topic, cultivating gratitude and positive psychology. It's all about actively nurturing the good things in our lives to boost your mood.
That sounds wonderful, Alex. After all the work we've done understanding our thoughts and feelings, it's exciting to focus on building joy and appreciation. So, positive psychology and gratitude, how do they connect to what we've been learning?
Great question, Lisa. Remember how we talked about reframing negative thoughts? Positive psychology takes that a step further. It's a field dedicated to understanding what makes life most worth living. And a huge part of that is focusing on strengths, happiness, and well-being. Gratitude is one of the most powerful tools in its arsenal.
Okay, so it's about actively seeking out the good rather than just trying to fix the bad. But sometimes when you're feeling down, it can be hard to see anything good at all.
Absolutely. That's why these practices are so important. They're not about ignoring difficulties, but about counterbalancing them with a conscious awareness of the positive. Think of it like strengthening a muscle. The more you practice noticing and appreciating things, the easier it becomes.
So, what are some of these practices for cultivating gratitude?
One of the simplest and most effective is keeping a gratitude journal. Each day, or a few times a week, jot down 3 to 5 things you're genuinely grateful for. They don't have to be grand gestures. It could be a warm cup of coffee, a chat with a friend, a beautiful sunset, or even just a comfortable bed.
That sounds manageable. So, just writing them down makes a difference?
It does. The act of writing forces you to pause, reflect, and articulate the positive. When you're done, take a moment to really feel that gratitude. Let it sink in. Over time, these small moments of appreciation accumulate, shifting your overall outlook. It's a direct way to challenge those automatic negative thoughts we discussed earlier. Instead of your mind defaulting to what's wrong, it starts to look for what's right.
I can see how that would help. It's like training your brain to spot the silver linings.
Exactly. Another powerful practice is the 3 good things exercise. At the end of your day, before you go to sleep, think about 3 things that went well and briefly explain why they went well. This is a bit more active than just listing. It involves a touch of analysis, which helps solidify the positive experience in your mind.
And this is different from the gratitude journal because it's more about reflecting on positive events and their causes.
Precisely. It encourages you to see your own role in creating positive outcomes or how external factors contributed. For example, you might say, I had a great conversation with my colleague because I made the effort to ask about their weekend. This highlights your ability to take action and the positive impact of your actions. We've seen how important behavioral activation is, and this exercise reinforces that connection.
That makes sense. It's not just about what happens to us, but also what we do.
You've got it. Beyond journaling, there are other simple ways to embed gratitude into your life. Try expressing your appreciation directly to others. A heartfelt thank you to the bus driver, a compliment to a coworker, or a note of appreciation to a loved one can have a profound impact, not just on them, but on your own sense of well-being.
It's amazing how a simple expression of thanks can make someone's day, and in turn, make your own day better. It creates a positive ripple effect.
It really does. And this ties into broader principles of positive psychology, like cultivating optimism. Optimism isn't about denying reality. It's about believing that generally good things will happen and that you can influence outcomes. Gratitude is a foundational element of this optimistic outlook. When you regularly acknowledge what's good, you build a reservoir of positive experiences to draw upon during tough times.
So, if life throws a curveball, your mind is more likely to anticipate that things will eventually improve, rather than assuming the worst.
That's the goal. Positive psychology also emphasizes identifying and using your character strengths. Have you ever thought about what your core strengths are beyond just your job skills? Things like kindness, creativity, perseverance, or curiosity.
I've thought about them in passing, but I haven't really sat down and intentionally identified them.
There are great resources and questionnaires online to help with that. But even just thinking about what comes naturally to you, what you enjoy doing, and what you're proud of can offer clues. The idea is to find ways to use these strengths more often in your daily life. When you're operating from your strengths, you naturally feel more engaged and positive. Think about it. When you're using your creativity on a project you love or showing kindness to someone, you're probably not dwelling on anxieties, are you?
Definitely not. You're fully absorbed in the activity and feeling good because of it. It's like being in that flow state we might have touched on briefly before.
Yes, that's a great connection. And this all builds towards what positive psychology calls flourishing, a state of living a good life characterized by positive emotions, engagement, meaning, positive relationships and accomplishment. Gratitude and identifying strengths are key ingredients for all of these.
So, we've talked about gratitude journaling, the three good things exercise, expressing appreciation, and identifying our strengths. What else can we do to cultivate this positive mindset?
Another powerful technique is savoring. This is about intentionally drawing out and appreciating a positive experience. It can be as simple as mindfully enjoying your meal, stretching out a pleasant conversation, or replaying a happy memory in your mind. It's about prolonging and deepening positive moments. Remember our discussion on mindfulness? Savoring is a form of mindful engagement with positive experiences.
Savoring. I like that word. It sounds like deliberately holding on to those good feelings for a bit longer before they fade away.
Exactly. And to help solidify these concepts, let's recap. We've explored how positive psychology and gratitude can actively enhance our mood, moving beyond just managing negative emotions. We introduced practical techniques like keeping a gratitude journal, doing the three good things exercise, and expressing appreciation to others. We also touched on identifying and using our character strengths and the practice of savoring positive experiences.
So, it's about intentional cultivation. It's not just waiting for happiness to strike, but creating the conditions for it. These practices provide concrete steps to help us build a more optimistic and appreciative outlook, which further reinforces the reframing and thought challenging we've been doing in earlier episodes.
You've summed it up beautifully, Lisa. These are skills that, with consistent practice, can fundamentally change how you experience your emotional landscape. They build resilience by buffering against the inevitable challenges life presents. Remember, it's about consistently acknowledging and amplifying the good.
This episode has been so inspiring, Alex. It feels like a really positive step towards a sustainable way of managing our moods.
It truly is, and it sets us up perfectly for our next discussion. Next episode, Building Your Emotional Toolkit. Welcome back. We're putting everything we've learned into your very own emotional toolkit.
That's right, Alex. We've covered so much ground, from understanding our emotions to actively changing our thinking patterns. Now, it's time to bring it all together and see how these pieces fit to help us manage our moods effectively.
Exactly. Remember the idea that our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are all interconnected? This is the bedrock of our toolkit. If you change one part, you can influence the others.
And we've explored so many ways to do just that. We started with understanding our automatic thoughts, those quick, often negative little whispers that pop into our heads. Catching those thoughts is our first crucial tool.
Absolutely. Thought catching is like becoming a detective of your own mind. You learn to notice those automatic thoughts without necessarily believing them. It's about observation, not judgment. So, you might notice a thought like, I'm going to fail this presentation. The first step is just noticing that thought is there.
And then the next tool in our kit, challenging those negative thoughts. We learned about cognitive distortions, those common thinking errors. So, when you catch a thought like that presentation one, the next step is to question it. Is it really true? What evidence do I have for it? And what evidence do I have against it?
That's right. Challenging those distortions is key. We're not just accepting negative thoughts as fact. We're actively looking for the truth, and often, the evidence doesn't support the extreme negative prediction. Then, we move to reframing. We talked about finding alternative interpretations.
So, instead of I'm going to fail, a reframed thought might be I've prepared for this presentation and I'll do my best. Even if it's not perfect, I can learn from it. It's about shifting the perspective to something more balanced and realistic.
Precisely. And this reframing directly impacts our feelings. When you challenge a negative thought and reframe it, Your emotional response starts to shift from anxiety to something more manageable, perhaps even a sense of quiet confidence. But it's not just about thinking differently, it's also about acting differently.
Ah, behavioral activation. We focused on this, and I found it so empowering. It's the idea that sometimes we need to act first to feel better. When you're feeling down, the impulse is to withdraw, but taking even small actions like going for a walk or calling a friend can genuinely lift your mood.
It's a powerful feedback loop. Engage in a behavior you enjoy, or even just a behavior that helps you feel more capable and that can improve your thoughts and your feelings. It's about breaking the cycle of inaction that often accompanies low mood.
And what about being present with our feelings? We introduced mindfulness. It's like having a gentle way to observe our emotions without getting swept away by them.
Mindfulness is a fantastic tool for emotional awareness. Instead of fighting or suppressing difficult emotions, mindfulness teaches us to acknowledge them, to notice them without judgment. You can feel sadness, anger, or anxiety and recognize it as a temporary experience. It's about saying, okay, this feeling is here right now, and that can reduce its intensity. You learn that you can experience a feeling without being consumed by it.
And when those overwhelming feelings do arise, or when challenges seem insurmountable, problem solving skills come into play. We discuss strategies for tackling issues head on rather than letting them fester.
Exactly. We learn to break down problems into smaller, manageable steps. Define the problem clearly, brainstorm solutions, evaluate them, choose one, implement it, and then review. This proactive approach builds resilience. It's about knowing you have the capacity to handle life's bumps.
So, we got thought catching, challenging distortions, reframing, behavioral activation, mindfulness, and problem solving. That's a pretty robust toolkit already. But we also talked about building healthy habits, didn't we?
Yes, this is about the long game. Sustainable mood optimization relies on consistent, healthy routines. Getting enough sleep, eating nutritiously, regular physical activity, and those moments of connection or creativity. These aren't just nice to haves, they are fundamental pillars of emotional well being. They create a strong foundation for our emotional health.
And it's not always a smooth ride, is it? We're all human, and we'll have setbacks. It's okay to have a bad day or a challenging period. The key is not to let it derail all our progress.
That's a critical point, Lisa. Managing setbacks means recognizing them without falling into all or nothing thinking. It's about dusting yourself off and returning to the tools that work. It's about self compassion and understanding that progress isn't always linear. You simply pick up the tools again.
And to really solidify that positive emotional state, we introduced gratitude and positive psychology. It's about actively focusing on the good in our lives and cultivating a more optimistic outlook.
Cultivating gratitude is like giving your emotional toolkit a positive charge. Regularly acknowledging the good things, no matter how small, shifts your focus and reinforces positive feelings. It's about actively training your brain to notice the sunshine, not just the clouds.
So, to recap, we've brought together all the powerful techniques we've explored. Your emotional toolkit consists of understanding the thought-feeling-behavior connection, becoming adept at thought catching, challenging cognitive distortions, reframing negative thoughts, using behavioral activation to get moving, practicing mindfulness for emotional awareness, employing problem-solving skills, building healthy daily habits, preparing for and managing setbacks, and actively cultivating gratitude.
It's a comprehensive set of strategies. The key now is practice. Pulling these tools out regularly, integrating them into your daily life, and seeing the positive impact they have on your emotional well-being. It's about making these skills second nature, so that when life throws you a curveball, you're not caught off guard. You're prepared and equipped to manage it.
It's like having a mental gym membership. The more you use these techniques, the stronger your emotional resilience becomes. And it's not about eliminating negative feelings entirely, but about managing them effectively and fostering a more balanced, positive emotional life.
Absolutely. This entire series has been about empowering you with the knowledge and skills to become the architect of your own emotional well-being. You have the power to rewire your emotional compass. Next episode, Living with Mind over Mood, a Sustainable Future. Welcome back to Mind over Mood.
And what a journey it's been, Alex. We've covered so much ground, from understanding our emotions to actively changing how we think and feel. It feels like we've built a comprehensive toolbox for navigating our inner world.
Exactly, Lisa. And the key takeaway for this final episode is that this isn't a destination. It's a continuous practice. Mind over Mood is about developing a lifelong habit of emotional awareness and skillful response. Remember all those automatic thoughts we learned to identify? They don't just disappear. The goal is to become more adept at noticing them, understanding their impact, and choosing a more helpful response.
That's so important. It's not about eliminating negative thoughts entirely, but about not letting them dictate our entire emotional state. It's like having a slightly mischievous gremlin in your head sometimes, but you've learned its tricks and can manage it much better.
A perfect analogy. We started by understanding our emotional landscape, recognizing the range of feelings we experience and how they signal different things to us. Then we dove into those automatic thoughts, those quick, often judgmental, mental statements that pop into our heads. Remember the CBT triangle? How our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are all interconnected.
Yes, the CBT triangle. That was a huge revelation for me. How a single thought, like, I'm going to fail this presentation, can trigger a feeling of anxiety, leading to a behavior like avoiding eye contact or rushing through my points. It showed me exactly where I could intervene.
And that intervention point is crucial. We explored identifying cognitive distortions, those common, unhelpful thinking patterns like black and white thinking or overgeneralization. Once we could spot these distortions, we learned the art of thought catching, simply observing our thoughts without immediate judgment, just noting them down.
Thought catching felt like the first real step in gaining control. It's like becoming a detective of your own mind. And then came the challenging part, actually challenging those negative thoughts. Using evidence to see if they were truly accurate or if there were other, more balanced interpretations.
Precisely. That reframing process, finding alternative perspectives, was about expanding our mental horizons. We saw how this thought-feeling behavior cycle plays out, reinforcing itself. So, to break a negative cycle, we needed to tackle it from multiple angles.
And behavioral activation was a powerful tool for that. When we feel low, we tend to withdraw. But activating our behavior, engaging in activities we enjoy or find meaningful, even when we don't feel like it, can actually shift our mood. It's a proactive approach.
It's counterintuitive, but so effective. We also integrated mindfulness and emotional awareness, learning to be present with our feelings without getting swept away by them. This allows us to observe emotions, understand their transient nature, and respond more thoughtfully.
Mindfulness really helped me with that stormy cloud analogy. Emotions come and go, and I don't have to be the whole storm. And problem-solving skills were so practical, helping us tackle the actual issues that might be contributing to our distress.
Yes, moving from just feeling bad to actively finding solutions. Then we looked at building healthy habits. This isn't about a quick fix, but about creating a lifestyle that supports emotional well-being. Things like consistent sleep, healthy eating, and regular exercise. These are the foundations.
And it's so reassuring to know that setbacks are normal. We learned that maintaining progress isn't about perfection, but about resilience. When we do slip back into old patterns, we have the tools to recognize it, learn from it, and get back on track.
Exactly. Managing setbacks is a sign of progress, not failure. And finally, We explored cultivating gratitude and positive psychology, actively focusing on the good things in our lives, no matter how small, shifts our overall perspective and boosts our mood. It's about appreciating what we have.
So, to recap, we've learned to understand our emotions and thoughts, identify unhelpful thinking patterns, challenge and reframe negative thoughts, and understand the interconnectedness of our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. We've embraced behavioral activation, practiced mindfulness, developed problem solving skills, built healthy habits, learned to manage setbacks, and cultivated gratitude. It's a comprehensive emotional toolkit.
And the goal now is to integrate all of this into your daily life. Think of mind over mood as your ongoing companion, a set of skills you actively use and refine. It's about making conscious choices about how you interpret events, how you respond to challenges, and how you nurture your own emotional health. It's a journey of continuous self-discovery and growth. Remember that initial spark of wanting to change your emotional responses? Keep that spark alive by consistently practicing these techniques.
It's empowering to know that we have this much influence over our own well being. It's not about waiting for your mood to improve, but about actively creating the conditions for a better mood.
Absolutely. This isn't about becoming a different person, but about becoming a more skilled, resilient, and content version of yourself. Keep experimenting, keep observing, and most importantly, keep practicing. You have the power to rewire your emotional responses and live a more fulfilling life.
Thank you all for listening. It's been an incredible experience exploring mind over mood with you.
Thanks for listening to the series.